can change in 1 week. Believe the hype, the train's leaving tonight. Hit the throttle. We headed straight to Chicago. It's only getting better. This is our future endeavor.
Let's get ready to
fight between Pac, Kenny, or
Christopher Daniels, collectively known as SoCal and Central, or SCU. You are listening to the All Elite Podcast, and it is the worst podcast I've ever been on. SCU later.
Welcome back, All Elite family, to a special early edition of the All Elite Podcast. I am your host, Andrew Kazir, and as always, I'm joined by my boy, wrestling nerd, a pro wrestling enthusiast, All Elite fan, Big Match AJ. AJ, how's it going?
It's going okay now. I had a lot of computer problems earlier, which is why we're doing this early, but it seems to be okay now.
Yeah, AJ definitely ran into a couple of computer issues, so we decided to get things taken care of, recorded, uploaded early today. That way, in case his computer decides to shut down indefinitely, we at least have something for Monday. Who knows where things will be on Wednesday? It's something we'll have to keep you updated on, but I don't think things will be an issue going forward. Hopefully not, at least. Nonetheless, AJ's doing all right. I'm doing well. I just coming off of the Thanksgiving holiday, got to eat a bunch of food, see a bunch of family, do all of that cool stuff. So I haven't really actually been paying too much attention to everything going on in AEW until the last couple of days, actually, and it surprised me to see. I didn't get to see the match itself, but I saw on the news sites this morning Kenny Omega defended the Mega Championship this weekend at a AAA event versus Dragon Lee. I'm actually excited to go and check this one out. Dragon Lee's right there with Phoenix and a very impressive talent, someone I would love to see AEW potentially bring in, especially with that working relationship with AAA. Dragon Lee related to Roosh as well, both doing things in Ring of Honor and New Japan, so who knows how long it would be before we could see them in AEW, but it's interesting to see him working with Dragon Lee, because like I said, the brother of Roosh, Dragon Lee does want to sort of continue his time with New Japan as has been promoted in the Wrestling Observer. However, Roosh has been said to want to sort of keep things stateside or within Mexico, and if he wants to do that and get on a bigger stage than Ring of Honor, I know his contract's coming up at the end of the year. Same thing with Dragon Lee. I mean, these are two super talented Mexican athletes that AEW could definitely be looking to bring in, so it's cool to see that Omega got the chance to square up with Dragon Lee, and they probably had a phenomenal match. Dragon Lee's a great one. Yeah,
Dragon Lee is one of the best lightweight talents I think we've seen in the past decade.
Yeah. If the only reason I wouldn't want to see him go to AEW is so he could go do the thing in New Japan with Hiromu. Those two seem like a lifelong feud that is just destined to go, and it's a beautiful when they have their matches. It's almost like a car crash, but nonetheless, they're good matches. So he's someone I would love to see in AEW. I'd love to see them utilize some of this footage from AAA in any way, like even on Being the Elite or something like that, to showcase like these matches. Put it on Dark even. That would be really cool. I guess it depends on the contractual obligations for someone like Dragon Lee, but they did the original match with Phoenix, and they could have put that on Dark. So that's the only thing that I would have liked to see. And they did mention, actually, though, that this pay-per-view event would be available on YouTube this week sometime. So if you do want to check it out, I don't believe it'll be the AEW one. I think it's going to be some AAA account. But you can see this match. And if you are a fan of Omega and you've never really heard of Dragon Lee, this is going to be one to check out.
Yeah, absolutely. Dragon Lee is, like we said, just amazing. He's one of the top guys, I think, in AAA right now, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and he's not someone that I would necessarily have pinned to be an Omega opponent, because like you said, he's more of a lightweight superstar, but then seeing the match on paper and seeing it announced, I'm like, oh, that would be actually really cool to see. Another match that I think would be really cool to see that's been teased a little bit on social media is Kenny Omega versus Brian Cage. I think that's something that we could see maybe in a AAA arena. Not sure how well it would work out within AEW. I know AEW wanted to bring in Brian Cage. They had discussed potentially utilizing him for the Battle Royal, and then things just sort of fell through at the last minute between Impact and AEW, and that's unfortunate because, again, the teasing of this match is cool.
Yeah, Brian Cage is so damn good, and in conjunction, this is one of the best big guy wrestlers I think we've had in the past decade. So I absolutely would love to see these two square off. I think Brian Cage is if he was in AEW, God, I don't even know how that would shake the landscape.
He would really have the potential to be like we've been talking about, where they haven't necessarily made someone new into that upper level guy yet, outside of maybe Darby. I think Cage would easily slide into that position as a fresh face for most fans, but can easily be a top guy. When I saw that picture with him standing right next to Omega, there's not that much difference in height. I thought Cage was used to, like, in my eyes, was a lot shorter, but built. Seeing him up against Omega, he's obviously not as short as I thought. So just that fact alone, I think he has a chance to be like a main event star, especially in a company like AEW. So I don't necessarily even think it's a if but when thing with those two. So that would be interesting to see nonetheless.
Oh yeah, and what they could do in the ring together would be astonishingly cool. And I don't think they've ever wrestled each other, or at least I've never seen it. And I feel like if they had, I would have, right?
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. And again, I think Cage might do some work for AAA, so that might be something they're teasing, is a Brian Cage versus Omega match in AAA, which would be phenomenal for every party involved, Impact, AAA, and AEW, just because that's a match that you want to see. So you're going to go to AAA where it's almost not, it's immediate, like a mediator spot where it's in the middle. It's not AEW zone, it's not Impact zone, but they're in the middle. They're meeting up and utilizing a meeting company that they're both working with. So I think that's a cool way to go about it, and that could be interesting to see happen.
I would love it if AEW and Impact had or started a relationship of some kind, because I know we've talked about New Japan and Ring of Honor, but all the drama going on with that. But Impact really does have such a great roster. They have Brian Cage, they have Sam Callahan, they have Tessa Blanchard. They have so many people that would be just really beneficial for both parties too, because AEW obviously is such a stacked roster. I think it's not fair to count out the possibility of a working relationship between these two companies.
Yeah, I think the biggest downfall right now is that WWE and NXT just sort of did their crossover thing, so it would look kind of bad to do an Impact invasion. But with the roster that Impact has, they could easily have done something like that with a Tessa and a Sammy and just some of these other really talented athletes that they have on the roster. They easily could have done something like that, but that's not to say that they can't easily just do a working relationship, as you're saying, and sort of just share talent. Guys like Marco, guys like Darby could go to Impact and get a strong run, come back to AEW, and it's still a stateside run, a way to be seen on TV. Maybe not as high of a platform as TNT, but still another platform nonetheless. And you could still utilize them because I believe Impact still does a lot of taping. So they're doing a month or two at a time. So you send Darby off for a taping, does four matches, comes back, boom. And he's just seen everywhere for 4 weeks on Impact's TV, as well as once every 2 weeks on your TV, because that is one downside to AEW, is that they only have so much time, and they do have a lot of stars that they need to utilize that time for. So maybe a company like Impact is the best one to work with, where they have a television deal, but it's not so much of an issue like with Sinclair and Ring of Honor. So who knows? Not really something I had really considered, especially because that initial issue with the Battle Royal. But if they could get something done there, that's a beautiful relationship. I think that AEW could benefit a lot from the talent pool that Impact has, because it's not like people who are necessarily super well known, but all talented across the board in Impact.
Yeah.
Another talent that is super talented and being offered contracts from many different areas, apparently, Kris Statlander, as seen on AEW last week, has apparently been offered a contract from AEW, and to some people, they were a little confused at seeing Statlander on AEW television over the past couple of weeks, because under many people's impression, Statlander was on her way to Florida to work with NXT and sort of do that gimmick. It had been reported potentially she had signed a deal with WWE and NXT. Turns out that's not the case. Statlander shows up on Dynamite last week, and people are wondering what's happening, what could happen. I think it would be smart for AEW to offer her a deal, and the way that they positioned her on television, it leads me to believe that there definitely is a deal in place or in play.
Yeah, every, I think, female talent they've had who's done 2 matches has gotten a contract and has signed. So I'm guessing they're going to scoop up Kris Statlander, which is a great move because she's super talented. Her promo is not the best, but she's only been doing this for, I think, 2 years. Considering that and how good she is in the ring, I think it's so impressive how much she's progressed in such a short amount of time. So absolutely, I think this is a great move for AEW if they offer that contract. And if she signs it, because obviously there's, I guess, a little bit of a bidding war going on here over her, which is great for her. But if she signs it, I think that's going to be great for AEW.
Yeah, I agree, and it's just interesting to see, like, maybe there was a holdup on WWE's end. She got tired of waiting, got an offer from AEW, and was like, why wouldn't I at least take or investigate, see what the potential is? So who knows? I mean, this could definitely become a situation where WWE goes out of their way to make sure they get someone like Kris Statlander. She's super talented. I don't necessarily think she's worth dropping the whole bank on, to say, but she's talented and worthwhile bringing into the division, because just in her short showing last week, she sort of made me a fan and made a lot of people in the arena and the live crowd a fan, and that's one of the most important parts. Is within that AEW roster, there have been some new faces, or maybe even not new faces, but jobbers that they've brought in that obviously weren't able to connect with the audience. But if you can bring in someone like Kris Statlander and she's immediately connecting, then there's something there worth bringing her in. It's really cool to see, very interesting to see, too, just the potential of someone who wasn't necessarily well known a year or two ago now potentially being a very sought-after free agent just because she is skilled.
Yeah, and like that's the key point. She is super skilled, and it's not just that it's the amount of time, because most people who have been wrestling a year or two are not as good as she is, and so she's already on a level of, I would say, Britt Baker in the ring. I would say she's in ring wise just as good. Where she lacks again is the promos, but that's something that you can work on. That's something you, especially in AEW, where you have so many good promo people, so many good interviewers, that you can really help her out there and she can really start to shine.
Yeah, dude, and that is the important part, and I honestly had to look it up because I wasn't too sure how spot on you were with the fact that she had only been in wrestling for 2 years, because she is so talented, and you're right. Very hard to argue the fact. I looked it up. 2 years, started in June 14th of 2017, so for someone to be able to grow and become talented and have this much success, like I said, someone that really wasn't well known a year ago and has now had the ability to be showcased on both AEW television, WWE television. So it'll be interesting to see what necessarily happens with her, because she has such a unique look. She's different, but also has like a look of, like, I don't know, something I've seen before, but not in wrestling, more so in movies or something, like that badass character. So cool to see, interesting to note. Something else interesting worth noting, the AEW is currently under investigation from the Maryland Athletic Commission due to the match with Omega and Moxley at Full Gear. Apparently there were quite a few things that went down in that match that might not necessarily pass the sniff test for the Maryland Athletic Commission. They did have someone there to deal with these things, so it's weird to note that this is an investigation that is happening, because you would think that, especially that it took so long for the information to get out, I guess, is more so my thing, because you would think that the Athletic Commission would have been on it right away. Now, maybe they were on it right away, and this news is just now breaking, so that's worth noting. But I don't know what the repercussions are for breaking the rules with the Athletic Commission. Maybe they won't be able to run in Maryland again or Baltimore.
I doubt that. I think it's going to be a fine, and they'll just take it on the nose, because I don't think I don't think Maryland is going to say, well, now we don't want you anymore because you cut a guy, because I think that was it. The lacerations and bleeding and things like that were apparently not allowed for the Maryland state, and I'm really surprised that they have this issue. I think they're just trying to get money out of them, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that or maybe just like some type of whistleblowing fan trying to bring trouble for AEW, because I don't even necessarily think it would be like WWE or another company trying to bring issues for AEW, but it very much could be like some petty fan. You see him on social media all the time where people just have to pick sides, feel like there's an issue maybe, because I really think that was something that I at least saw with the story on this that I saw, was there was someone like tweeting at the Athletic Commission being like, why is this an issue? And then the Athletic Commission let them know, like, we're already looking into it. So it is weird, I guess, just that certain fans feel the need to, like, they're breaking the rules in Baltimore, that's not allowed. But I mean, whatever, if you're that concerned about it. But it is just worth noting, and it would be unfortunate, to say the least, if they weren't able to run in Baltimore, because they definitely hinted to the idea, or alluded to the idea, that they would be back there again next year around the same time. So that would be a tough one to deal with if that is the case.
Honestly, I wasn't sold on the idea of them running Baltimore yearly like that. So maybe it's a blessing in disguise for all we know.
Baltimore fans are livid that you would even suggest such a thing. But no, I have to agree with you that Baltimore doesn't necessarily seem like the perfect destination hub. It was also really cold at that point in time. It's hard to compare the fact that it was a hub in the 80s or 90s to now. You very easily could make it one, but I feel like you don't have to make that one. You could find a different one. Like Chicago was already a ready-made wrestling area. You could easily do Philly, something like that, that type of area, which is ready-made for wrestling, that you could do a yearly event there. I don't feel like forcing a yearly event into an area makes much sense to me, but again, Baltimore has that history, so I understand it a little bit.
Yeah.
And we touched on it a little bit with Impact and AEW working together, but apparently there is a door open for AEW and New Japan working together. There was some type of interview or open session of questioning where I saw a little bit about this on the internet, and I didn't really take it with too much of fact. From what I'm seeing here, it's saying that it was the New Japan Pro Wrestling president who said this. The thing that I saw was a different PR person doing the speaking, so it was more or less them giving like formal response, like what else can they say. So this could be a different story that I'm seeing now from you, but I do think that it's kind of the same situation regardless. The president is going to give the same type of PR answers where it's like, he's obviously not going to be like, oh yeah, we screwed Kenny trying to get into Japan and we don't want to work with AEW and we're mad. It was just like, it's a business. We're not mad at the Young Bucks. We might work with them if that seems fit. It took a year. We wanted to see them for a year and see what they became.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I get what you mean. It seemed very... it seemed like they were just cracking the door open. And I think they did have some poignant things to say, that AEW's only existed for a year and they don't really know the brand well enough to make a decision right now. But it's good to know that even in a statement, even if it is just a PR guy, that they're not just going to shut the door and say, no, never, it's not going to happen, but rather it could happen, it's possible, and it's business. And I like that he said it's business, because that means if it's good business to do work with AEW, then that's something that they're probably going to consider doing.
Yeah, it's very different from the whole statement we got from the Young Bucks months ago saying that it would never happen. I honestly that makes me think that maybe the talks have already begun. The Young Bucks are trying to push people way off of the scent, and this guy obviously is like a president. He's being asked a direct question. He's going to just say, the door will always be open. It took a year for them. We wanted to see what they're about. And honestly, that makes sense. As a fan, initially, I was kind of irritated. Like, why wouldn't New Japan want this positive foothold in America on TV with the Young Bucks, with Omega? We could see so many great things from this, and we didn't. And at first, I was pretty bitter about it. But now that you see this in this perspective, it makes sense. You have to see what AEW is about. Yeah, the Young Bucks are involved. Omega's involved. You know them, but you don't know Tony Khan per se, or you might not know him very well. You might not know what direction he's looking to take the company, or the people with TNT are trying to take the company. New Japan obviously got snubbed in many ways by Impact in the past when they worked with Okada and just could not make a star out of someone who was born to be a star. So I understand that in that perspective, but I also see that the Ring of Honor relationship is no longer as beneficial. It has come to a point where New Japan has and almost for a while they sort of surpassed the Ring of Honor stars. The reason that it worked so well for Ring of Honor is not Omega, but the Bucks and Cody, and even to an extent, Omega felt like Ring of Honor guys, even though Omega was there through New Japan. Like, they still felt like Ring of Honor guys because they were American, gaijin, they were popular within the United States. They had the Bullet Club, they had AJ Styles. Like, many people had been through Ring of Honor at that point. Now they really don't have that star power. New Japan seems to be the drawing power for Ring of Honor anytime they do a co-branded show. So the relationship doesn't seem to be beneficial to New Japan anymore, if you ask me.
And in large part, you can see why New Japan might be bitter about that, if they are, which who knows, because that's a lot to do with AEW, and not just AEW, WWE too scooped up a lot of guys. As you know, they got Adam Cole, but it's still it was basically a curtain call where AEW just left, or its guys just left to do AEW. And not only did they do that, but ROH worked with AEW initially to put on that first show, and now they're just all gone. So it left ROH in a terrible position. So it's hard to blame ROH right now, even though, like you said, they really don't have much to offer.
And the thing about ROH, seeing a statement like this would make me very concerned. You don't want to lose that New Japan relationship because, as we just said, when New Japan brings guys over to the States and utilizes them on Ring of Honor shows, it has been way more positive for Ring of Honor than anything else. So for Ring of Honor right now, they're struggling, and it's been evident ever since the show in Madison Square Garden that they're struggling, and it hasn't really gotten better with the issue of AEW coming up. Ring of Honor very much feels like a third or fourth even most popular company in the United States. So just that alone, like, obviously New Japan doesn't have much of a reason to continue working with them. It will be interesting to see if that AEW relationship can ever actually develop. That would be nice to see, but there are also other moving parts in that. I believe New Japan's relationship with CMLL, AEW's relationship with AAA, there's just a lot of things that come into play there. So you can never say never in wrestling, but the New Japan thing will always feel like a distant possibility. But I guess we'll have to see, again, with the two dome shows with New Japan. I think we could see a lot of interesting things in early January from those two companies if a relationship is going to bloom. Yeah,
I agree.
But it is interesting to see that. Another thing interesting worth talking about is the recent rankings AEW has put out. We get new rankings every Friday, and then every Monday AJ and I get to talk about them. This week, AJ, let's go ahead and start with the tag team division for the week of November 29th, 2019. Sitting at number 1, we have Proud and Powerful. Last week, they were sitting at number 4. At number 2 this week, we got the Young Bucks. They're sitting at the same spot as last week. They have the Best Friends in at number 3. They were unranked last week. The Lucha Brothers are down to number 4. Last week's ranking was number 1, and Private Party at number 5 after being ranked number 3 last week. The one thing that stands out immediately to me is this Lucha Brothers ranking. Did I miss something? I know they both might have lost. Weren't they in singles competition? But
that's right. They both lost in singles competition, and I guess that's why. But to drop them down to number 4 is very surprising to me.
And who did Proud and Powerful beat that?
That's what I was going to ask you. I have no idea.
Bumped them up to number 1. I guess maybe I might have missed something on Dynamite. I think they were involved. They might have had a match, but I don't know if it was worth this much to put them up to number 1. Bumping them up from number 4. I just am lost there. And I do know that the Best Friends had a decent victory this week, so that makes sense to me. But outside of that, I was just a little bit confused.
No, I am too. I'm right there with you. I mean, it's cool to see Proud and Powerful at number 1. I'm not bitching about it, but it's definitely odd. I'm feeling like I'm forgetting a match or something because I don't know why they got bumped up so high.
Yeah, I'm taking just a second to look at that. Otherwise, though, with the tag team rankings outside of Proud and Powerful, what are your thoughts? Especially the Best Friends being bumped up to number 3. I felt like they were missing last week, so that made sense to me.
That makes sense. Best Friends are exactly where they should be now, especially with Trent getting those victories. And then Young Bucks are still at 2. That's odd to me because why? They really haven't done anything. Nick Jackson, I think the last thing he did was beat Ray Phoenix. So I'm not entirely sure why the Young Bucks are still ranked so highly. If anything, I think the best friends or it should probably be the Young Bucks down at number 4, have the Lucha Brothers at number 2, have the best friends at number 3. But
yeah, I went and definitely went through the process of seeing last week's Dynamite. There was no Proud and Powerful match that we forgot about. There might have been a segment or something, but I don't really feel like segments are what should be bumping people up.
no.
I mean, maybe the Best Friends didn't do anything impressive. Proud and Powerful still has an undefeated record. Both the Lucha Brothers lost to the Best Friends in tag team competition, and then Trent beat Penta in singles competition. So I guess it makes sense for the Best Friends to be above them, but boy, these rankings are freaking weird.
They are weird, the tag team especially. And I don't know, I just can't wrap my head around how this works. You're right, the Best Friends should be above the Lucha Brothers. Let me redact what I just said. But other than that, the only thing that makes a lot of sense to me here is Private Party at number 5.
Yeah, but even then, still, like, they did nothing to.
Yeah.
I mean, they got bumped because of everything that happened around them, but that's where Proud and Powerful being pushed up so far is what confuses me. Oh, and we got our first call in on the All Elite podcast. No, not today. AJ says no, but no. The Best Friends at number 3 is fine. I mean, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm complaining too much about these rankings. I'm just very much confused about Proud and Powerful's positioning. I get that you don't really want to slide the Best Friends in at number 1. You don't really want to move. I mean, you want to put them above the Lucha Brothers after that victory. That's fine. I don't know.
No, I'm baffled. I don't understand this at all.
Yeah. I mean, based upon the overall and the tag team rankings, it makes some sense to me. The Young Bucks have the better overall out of everyone. Best Friends have a better overall than the Lucha Brothers. The Lucha Brothers have a better overall than Private Party. Proud and Powerful's overall is technically undefeated, or not undefeated, but 4-1. So I get that. That's in that sense it makes sense, but that doesn't seem to be how it works every week. So every week it just seems to mean something a little bit different.
Yep. I wish they were more clear about how these rankings worked, but until they are,
again, as something we've said a couple of times, maybe just do them monthly or every other week.
Yeah.
Because when you're doing them weekly, this is where you find yourself in a position of saying, well, the Best Friends did just beat the Lucha Brothers. Well, I don't want the Best Friends above Young Bucks and Proud and Powerful yet. Well, how do we figure this out? Oh, okay, put them at 3, 4, 5. Okay.
Yep.
And so, like, I get it, and it makes some sense, but it doesn't. It's confusing, especially if you, like last week, you're like, what? So, not a big issue there. I love Proud and Powerful being at number 1. Maybe they'll get some type of tag team opportunity, especially with Le Champion Chris Jericho beating the tag team champion Scorpio Sky. So maybe we'll see something there.
Yeah, I hope so. Proud and Powerful are so good, so if anybody is going to get a shot or for the tag titles, I would love it to be them. And that makes perfect sense, given the Scorpio Sky Chris Jericho match that we got.
Yeah, exactly. So it would be a cool way to see that go down. Very interested to see that. Another number 1 that I like is the women's division's number 1, Hikaru Shida, still at number 1. Emi Sakura bumping up to number 2 after being number 3 last week. Britt Baker falls to number 3 after being number 2, so those two just switching spots. Nyla Rose comes in at number 4 still, and Bea Priestley finally cracks the top 5 with a victory this week. Happy to see it. She deserves to be there. We got a ton of retweets with people agreeing with that same fact this past week. So, yes, Bea Priestley finally in the rankings, and as she said, she should be number 1. Maybe not based upon her record, but based upon my love for her, I agree. But no,
how good she is, it's amazing.
Maybe not number 1 though. Hikaru can stay number 1. So, but yeah, Bea was really impressive this week, I think. So
really impressive every time she's in the ring. Actually, she's always really impressive. So I don't know. I think she's just fantastic. We talked about it last week. We wanted with somebody like Bea Priestley to crack number 5 because Allie being there for so long really didn't make a lot of sense. And so seeing somebody who's actively wrestling and actively getting wins and somebody we both love is really cool to see.
Yeah, and especially with Allie sort of taking that valet role, this works for me. And you can continue to see that we could see B and Britt mix it up a couple more times. That's a feud that is a feud, but not one that's every week focused on, which I kind of like, because they've been able to extend it almost since like the first couple of shows. Like it's really gone on since Fight for the Fallen, at least, when B hit that drop kick and knocked Britt loopy. So it's cool to see that. And again, I like this ranking because you don't see a lot of fluctuation. Hikaru Shida did lose this week to B Priestley and Emi Sakura in tag team action. She didn't happen to be the one to take the fall, so that makes sense to me that she stays at number 1. Very good job there. They easily could have done something silly where Emi's number 1, Hikaru's number 2, because Hikaru lost. Glad they didn't go that far with it as they did again in the tag team division, where I felt like they forced that type of thing. But the women's rankings are solid. The women's division AEW is solid. Like, that's why we're excited to see the addition of Kris Statlander and stuff like that. I'm excited to see where Tessa Blanchard ends up in the next couple of months, or however long until she becomes a free agent. That if for no other reason, if I'm AEW and say Tessa's locked up to 2 years, I am immediately working out a relationship with Impact to utilize her now, because she is one of, if not the hottest commodity free agent on, like, or maybe not free agent, but independent-ish stars, because she's still at that Impact level. She's the person that draws people to look at Impact, or draws people to watch whatever independent wrestling show she might be on, like WrestleCade this past weekend, where she ripped Sandman's ass because he was talking shit. So it's cool to see, and she's legitimately like a locker room leader without even having that WWE run ever. So no matter where she ends up, she could easily join AEW and be tossed right into these rankings. So I know she doesn't have a ton to do with this, but as we're talking about the women's division, worth noting.
Yeah, absolutely, it's worth noting. Tessa Blanchard, even Cody, during Starrcast 4, said if he got to pick anybody to come to AEW, he would pick Tessa Blanchard, because it's just a no-brainer. She's that good.
Yep, so she would be worth bringing into the fold. But again, the women's division in AEW, even without someone like Tessa, very good and very much an exciting thing to watch. And I've been very impressed with people like Hikaru, who I was not super familiar with, and I've been impressed with over time. The one thing I would say is there is one person that I've wanted to see. I don't really remember her name off the top of my head. Maybe you do. She was, I think it was Yuka Sakazaki, where she was super over, super popular. Hasn't really gotten a chance to get that run in AEW. So with them continuing,
she did not sign a contract, I don't think.
Yeah, so who knows? Maybe that's just something where they won't be able to utilize. And I think, didn't something happen with the Joshi company over there too, where it sort of got bought up by New Japan? So utilizing a lot of those women who didn't sign would probably be a problem now. So yeah, but she was someone that I liked. So, but no, seeing Hikaru up there and Emi, both great talents, and seeing Nyla's continued dominance on the rankings, but not really like at number 1 or beating people she shouldn't be at, is perfect.
Yep, I agree.
And then on to the men's division top 5 for this week. We have Jon Moxley sitting at number 1 after being number 2 last week. Pac at number 2 after being number 1 last week. Omega bounces up to number 3 after being ranked number 5 last week. Omega falls down to number 4, nearly off the rankings where he should be. And MJF slides into number 5. Yeah, makes sense. MJF at number 5, beating Adam Page. And it's cool to see a different face again in the men's division. I would like to see Cody just removed. No offense to Cody, again, one of the top faces in the company, but when you're pulled out of contention for this title, and that's where I really feel like they jumped the gun just a little bit, not because the storyline is even, it's not been very good so far that they've done it, but not even because of that, but because they really had an opportunity to pair up MJF and Cody as a team, and they didn't need to get the titles, but a run for the titles, pull Cody off of this rankings, him and MJF make a rise, you get MJF a bunch of wins for him to make sense in a singles rankings, and then you have the split when they lose their title match or something like that. So I'm not trying to backseat book the whole thing, but that was what I would have liked, especially because I hate Cody being on these singles rankings. And I
do too.
I know Jim Ross told me to suck it. Jim Ross told me to suck it.
He told you to suck it, but they were justifying something that was completely ridiculous. They were saying, college teams that are eliminated are still in the rankings. It's like, what does that have to do with this?
I still don't know that that's a fact. Like the way that they said, because the way Excalibur worded it was like if a team was in college football and they were banned from bowl games, then they would still be ranked. And I have to call bullshit on that, but I don't know for sure. And our college football aficionado never shows up to the podcast, so we don't know for sure. But again, I don't know that that's true. But even if it's true, it's ridiculous. Why are we ranking someone
absurd.
who's not potentially going to be a contender? So whatever, go ahead and justify it, but I don't love that. Omega sliding to number 3, though, that's a positive. Pac going down to number 2 is fine. I don't really get Moxley being at number 1. Totally, like, it's fine because Pac did lose. Pac has to slide down. Omega, you don't want to bump him all the way to number 1, so that's fine. I mean, honestly, it's fine, actually, and it's cool to see that we're going to get that number 1 contender sort of chasing Jericho now, based upon the end of last week's show, so it all lines up.
I am kind of disappointed that it's not going to be Pac facing Jericho, but I get it. You want a top face. You want a big name face to go in. But I don't know. I thought Pac could be just an anti-hero, a badass. He could be a good tweener, that he doesn't have to be a face or a heel, and he can just go in, and then you can make somebody a top guy.
The thing about Pac that's almost a little weird is he seems to be going in that direction of the character I sort of thought Moxley would take in this Against the Machine, where they're kind of trying to screw him. He feels a lot like Daniel Bryan with a different twist on it, where he's winning all the time and he's pissed off, but he's never getting a title shot. Daniel Bryan was getting title shots but constantly being beaten down, and people would get irritated by that and then lose every title shot. So it's interesting to see that the way they're going with this with Pac, where he's basically sniffing on the door of a championship shot, but every time he's about to get it, he gets put in a match where he loses and just barely loses or has a great match. Like, he didn't even decisively lose to Omega, and the interesting thing we see here is I think that match could be this week on Dynamite. We had Pac challenge Omega. I'm not totally sure, but I know this week on social media, Pac was challenging Omega to that rubber match. Essentially, he said that since everyone in the Elite can just demand matches and get them, he wants his. So I could also see them not doing that match to sort of continue the idea that Pac just doesn't get what he wants because of whatever reason. But I like it.
I do too. I'm into the gimmick. I'm into the idea, and because like you said, they're doing that Daniel Bryan thing, and it's making me want him to get that title shot really badly. And I really just want to see Pac tear it up in the main event scene. And I think that's probably a genius booking tactic that I'm just being a mark right now, being like, why isn't Pac in the title picture? But nonetheless, why isn't Pac in the title picture? Make it happen.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to have built him up to that, because while people like us felt like he very easily could have been the first champion or in the first title match at the very least, there might have been people who weren't totally down with that or felt like his run just as cruiserweight champion or a lightweight champion would be something he would have to overcome. So give him quite a few victories over larger-than-life superstars like Omega or Moxley or people like that, and it helps establish him more as a dominant superstar. And I think in the process, we've kind of gotten this Daniel Bryan feel where you're like, why isn't he getting a title shot? He was number 1 every week. He's number 1. You guys don't give the number 1 contender a title shot, but now this week that he's not number 1, watch, Moxley will be handed a title shot for next week. But it is cool to see, and again, I really, really enjoy the fact that he's calling Omega out for a rematch, and I really hope that it's this week on Dynamite, because boy, would that be a card.
Oh, yeah. God, that would be awesome.
And let's just jump right into it and talk about this week's Dynamite card. We don't know for sure if Omega and Pac is going to be a thing. I haven't seen it confirmed anywhere, but again, Pac demanded the match on social media. He essentially said that these guys have been able to do it. Adam Page was able to do it. Why can't he? So he wants his match. So if that happens, that is alone worth tuning into Dynamite. Like, I would watch that every week on Dynamite. I don't care it just happened last week. I would watch it all the time. Because they can be creative.
50-50 booking, but it's Pac and Omega. I don't care.
Yeah, Joseph, go to sleep. But in a match that we do have officially announced, we're going to see Christopher Daniels take on Pentagon in a singles competition. I like this because I like seeing Pentagon in singles.
And I like seeing Christopher Daniels in singles, but like you said, Pentagon in singles action is just great. They've built up this feud, and, well, they haven't really built it up, but, I mean, they've done stuff with it, I should say.
Sort of the same as the Britt Baker thing where they teased it, gave you little tastes.
Yeah, and so to get this match now is cool, and I think these guys are going to tear it up for sure.
This one has the potential to be a match of the night candidate. It also will probably see some type of potential interference. I would like for it not to. And SCU doesn't have to get involved, but there's just so many moving parts between these two guys that I figure something could happen, even if it's just someone coming out to destroy both of them. Like maybe that's where we'll see the Blade and the Butcher make their appearance this week, because it would make sense there to get those two involved in with two other tag team type guys. But if not, I think that this match will be really good. I think that Pentagon and Phoenix, both super talented guys. And this is a great showcase for them. Again, I like that Pentagon isn't just being stuck in a tag team match or anything.
Yep.
He's getting that, or tag team division. He's getting that opportunity.
Yeah, and Ray Phoenix, too, on that end, has gotten his singles match, so it's only natural that we get these Pentagon matches.
Yeah, and speaking of Ray Phoenix, he also will have a singles match on the card going up against Trent in singles competition. Last week, Trent beating Pentagon on the episode of Dark, so a continuation of that feud there. And a good way for Trent to just keep looking really good. I just wonder how Chucky feels about all this.
I'm sure he doesn't care at all.
No, I agree, but it's funny to see just Trent being given that opportunity, and maybe this is the chance for someone like Trent to get that real opportunity. This is where they really, again, I say it almost every week probably, that they could utilize a mid-card or television championship right now so much for someone like Trent, someone like, I know Scorpio's a tag team champion, but even guys like him, Darby, anyone. So it's cool to see them continue to at least elevate all of their people on the card, and these two are great guys, so it's going to be a great match.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. Trent and Phoenix are both fantastic. I am so excited. This is another one where it could easily be the match of the night.
Yeah, like I was saying, if they add Pac and Omega, this is going to be a stacked card. Another reason for it being a stacked card, we're getting Janela versus Moxley. John Moxley issuing an open challenge, and Joey Janela sort of addressing that on social media, saying he will be the one to take on Moxley. I have no idea what is going on with Janela, because he didn't really reference anything to make me think anymore that initial tweet was a work, because they aren't really working into it anymore. But maybe it still is. Maybe they're just not going with that angle of the story anymore. Who knows? But
I think it wasn't a work, and I think he got what he wanted.
I mean, that could be very true. We will have to see. I mean, again, are they going to... I mean, I think I'll know for sure if Shawn Spears somehow gets involved in this match, or we see a continuation of Janela and Spears, because that is the thing that was the biggest issue. But it's a cool match nonetheless to see, and going to be interesting to see where they go with what's going on. Because Janela is someone I love as a competitor and just a creative and everything like that.
Yes.
I just want to see what is going to happen, because after all of that, I was like, shit, I don't want to lose our guy, and now he's up in a match against Moxley, which, like I said last week, these were the matches that he was talking about being fundamental to him wanting to be in AEW, and he had gotten it, and that was why he was happy there. So it's cool to see him get another match like this. It's just so weird.
It's also cool to see him get it is weird. It's bizarre. I don't want to gloss over that. But it's also cool to see him get a match against Moxley that isn't an unsanctioned match, where it'll actually count for the record. Because, like you said, if Shawn Spears gets involved and hits Janela with a chair, guess who wins?
Yeah, that is true. That's worth noting. That's a technical win over Moxley, or at least helps his record or something like that. Who knows? I mean, again, I think that the Spears and Janela feud could be fine. It's just weird. Just weird.
Yeah. It's pretty bizarre.
With him deleting the tweet and then nothing really referencing it, and I totally could have seen how that was a storyline angle, and it just could be like an aborted storyline, like, whoa, the fans are taking this the whole wrong way, abort, then I totally get it, but otherwise it's like, whoa, this is weird.
It's super weird, and it was, I think the pick up the phone line was the weirdest part of the tweet, because it was like, oh my god, what's happening? But I don't know. Maybe they weren't picking up the phone, and now he has a match with Mox, or maybe, like you said, it's an aborted angle, or maybe we're going to see what it's all about this week. It's hard to say.
Yeah,
it's really hard to say anything with Janela.
Yeah, and there was just no reference on social media about it really either. Or maybe not social media, but commentary, I should say, where they're talking about he's not here or for any reason. Now, I think that could be addressed. Well, was Shawn Spears on last week's episode?
No.
So he will be on this week's episode of Dark. You remember he was doing commentary.
Yeah.
So I think he's doing commentary on this week's episode of Dark. I don't think that Janela will come out and attack him because, again, Janela wasn't supposed to be there. But I do think that we could hear Spears, like, just address Janela and run down the whole thing.
So, wait, is he doing commentary on Dark again?
Oh, well, that's what I was asking you, if he had done it last week or not.
Yeah, he did it last week, sorry.
Oh, okay. So that was my only thing of where it might get addressed. Otherwise, I have no clue. So,
yeah, I mean, he talked about Janela briefly, but all he said was like, "Y'all don't even get me started on Joey Janela," and that was about it.
So, yeah, that'll always be weird to me, I think. Could have just been a drunk Janela text or tweet, so who knows?
Could be. Too many White Claws.
Yeah. But then we also have the main event announced for next week's Dynamite. We have the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes taking on Santana. Isn't it Dustin Rhodes?
Yeah.
Yeah, for some reason the tweet that I copied said Cody Rhodes, but it's the Young Bucks and Dustin Rhodes versus Santana, Ortiz, and Sammy Guevara. A decent match main event, but Cody would have probably been a more interesting main event. That's nothing to say against Dustin. Well, honestly, Dustin might be the more interesting main event just because his work in AEW and in tag team matches has been so uniquely good because you weren't expecting it that, hell, it could be very surprising once again.
It could be. It could also just be another, big inner circle elite fight, and then it's going to end in a big brawl, and then we're going to go off air, and I don't want to see that again. We touched on it a little bit about how they've been doing that too much, but I don't know. I guess we'll see. I would prefer, personally, if it was Cody, because I do not see how this match is going to live up to this card, especially if they add Omega and Punk.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. I do think it gives the opportunity for Sammy to get a win over Dustin in the main event. Again, Sammy literally only has ever been in the main event or the opener of AEW. I think that's worth noting that he's a handpicked guy to potentially be a star going forward because they're putting him in a prime position every chance they get.
Yeah.
But I think he could easily be like Dustin could be there to be the fall guy for Sammy. I think it also gives the opportunity for Santana and Ortiz to pick up a win, or maybe the Bucks pick up a win and then they become the number one contenders somehow, based upon the rankings. So it's interesting to watch through that. But I think I have to agree with you, just based upon every match we've ran down, the potential of Omega and Pac. This one as the main, and they already said it's the main. That's my biggest issue. It would have been a great opener.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. This would be a perfect opener, but what are you going to do? It's not like I'm going, oh, well, now the show is ruined, but it's
based upon the rest of the card, it's got a lot to live up to, and sort of the only way you live up to the rest of the card is kind of doing what they do all the time, and that's the big, crazy ending. Which is fine.
Yeah.
But a decent episode of Dynamite nonetheless lined up for us this week. AJ, go ahead and just briefly touch on, I know you said there wasn't a lot worth noting, but go ahead and tell us about this week's Being the Elite just a little bit.
It was hilarious, man. It was Being the Inner Circle, and it was a really short episode, so I would recommend anybody who is like, oh, I'm not a Being the Elite guy, just check it out, because it's not Being the Elite. It is pretty different, and it is pretty, like, when they stole the camera, they also kidnapped Leva Bates, so they started it off with Leva Bates reading Proud and Powerful and Sammy G a book, and they're all just sitting down cross-legged listening to her read a book, and then they're starting to rant about the book, and then they all learn a good lesson of not to kidnap people. There's just a lot of fun little gags of just stuff like that. They did a mailbag. Sammy had to answer the question of what's it like being a god. It wasn't anything noteworthy in that, oh man, this is going to be really relevant on Dynamite, but it was just a fun episode.
Which is good, because that's kind of what you want from Being the Elite, but it is the one thing that's kind of like, well, what the hell, is they almost always on Being the Elite have something like that, where there's a little bit of storyline or a little bit of relation to Dynamite or whatever. This doesn't really feel like that outside of the fact that they took over the show. Also, why will the Elite get the show back next week then?
Oh, yeah, they did that too. The merch freak showed up and scared them off, and they dropped the camera.
Oh,
The merch freak, of course, being Nick Jackson using his magic.
That's cool. That's fine. But
You had to do it some way.
yeah. So without doing a brawl or anything that you would necessarily have to see as a fan, that's fine. But this is the type of thing that makes me wonder why we do serious things on Being the Elite that people should sort of know about. Because when something like this happens, like this is a nothing episode. Like the merch freak thing, I totally get it. It's funny. It's haha. But it's also like this is your big heel group, and they're just like giving up like that. Like I didn't see it, so I could totally be reading it the wrong way.
It was more absurd than I'm making it sound. So it was like he, transformed, and then there was a young buck shirt on him.
So that's fine, and it's cool. It's funny. Being the Elite, it's exactly what it should have been. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Let's go ahead and wrap the episode up by just giving a brief predictions on tomorrow's episode of Dark. First match, we have Brandon Cutler taking on Jimmy Havoc. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I'm going to have to say it's Jimmy Havoc, but that Brandon Cutler, he could finally pull one out.
Yeah, I think that's, Cutler's been a good hand. I think this could just be a good match more so than anything.
Yeah.
Like a decent showing for Havoc to show that he can have good matches and not just the hardcore quality stuff that he does. And Cutler's good enough, too. So as long as Excalibur doesn't get in and choke out Jimmy Havoc, it should be a Jimmy Havoc win. I have to agree with you there. And then sort of in the same theme of the last match, we have Shawn Spears taking on Sonny Kiss. Sonny Kiss not a very good record in AEW, hasn't really had an opportunity to shine, hasn't really gotten over a lot with me and you either. No. Some of the audience loves Sonny Kiss, some of the audience doesn't really care for Sonny Kiss for obvious reasons. That's I don't think that makes sense to me, but there's just some parts of the gimmick that I don't love. So I think that Kiss is cool, but I don't think that Kiss will win this match.
I think Kiss's gimmick could be, I think it's not a matter of, the gimmick sucks. I think it's just the execution, because it could be so good, and it's just not. But anyways, I love Shawn Spears, so I'm going to say Shawn Spears.
Yeah, that's fair. You're obviously going to say Shawn Spears. And I don't want to, sound as I'm coming off as too harsh about the gimmick or anything, but, there's two streams of thought, obviously. Like, there are some fans who straight up just don't, who are obviously bigots and don't care for Sonny Kiss just based upon the fact that they perceive that gay people are not good, or whatever, however they want to view it. But I think my biggest issue with it is just how over the top the gimmick is. And if you even want to be over the top and feminine and everything, that's totally fine. It's always going to be that one spot, man, where the ass to face thing, where it's I totally it's just a spot in wrestling, but it's just not for me, and it kind of turns me off of literally the whole character. I will essentially equate it to Isaiah Cassidy and his Scream. The thing that I'll give Isaiah Cassidy and Sonny Kiss is that they're not going to change who they are for someone like me who doesn't get it or doesn't like it, because Isaiah Cassidy straight up said to someone on social media, no, I'm not going to quit screaming. And I was like, damn, but okay.
You know what? I can even compare this, because Naomi does the same spot. I love Naomi. I think she's a great wrestler. I don't like that spot.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that spot with Naomi either. So it has nothing to do with even the gimmick, I guess. It's just that spot would primarily be my biggest issue, because I love the fact that Sonny Kiss is being able to break down doors and do something different and not just be perceived as that Orlando Jordan type character. But that spot almost feels like a spot reserved for that kind of character, and I think that's where I don't love it. I see Sonny Kiss as being the person to break down doors and even be flamboyant and over the top and all of these things, and still be a super talented person. But hey, maybe that spot is themselves. Maybe Sonny Kiss saw Naomi do that spot and was like, I want to do that too because I can relate with Naomi. So I get it, and I'm not trying to be totally against it. All I'm trying to say is that spot is what totally tunes me out, but I do appreciate the fact that Sonny Kiss and Isaiah Cassidy and any other talent will go in there and do their thing, and just because fans like me don't get it or don't love it, they're still going to do it because they don't have to conform for every fan. Yeah. So Sonny Kiss, not for me.
Like they said, it's a buffet.
Yeah. So a butt bump buffet. But
a butt buffet.
But I'm with you there. Shawn Spears probably going to pick up the win in this one. Honestly, this episode of Dark seems like a filler one, just because, again, in our main event, Proud and Powerful up against Jurassic Express. We love the Jurassic Express, but they essentially fall into the same placement as Sonny Kiss and Brandon Cutler as like almost AEW's job squad, where these people are brought in to take losses to the people that AEW does want to elevate. And I'm so pissed that Jungle Boy and Marco have fallen to that spot for me.
I hate it. I hate it so much. I was going to say the same thing. Why? They are so talented and they have so much potential. And Jungle Boy himself, forget everybody else, Jungle Boy himself is so young and has so much potential to be maybe not a top guy, but an upper mid guy. And
that Trent position.
And he's just getting put in this jobber position, and I don't get it.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do, obviously, with Luchasaurus taking that injury. Them sort of maybe seeing Luchasaurus as more potential as a singles guy, especially with them able to use Jungle Boy and Marco as a tag team. I just think it's such a disservice to Jungle Boy. Like, Marco's fine and as himself, but like pairing him with Jungle Boy, you should still be able to see victories there. Any victories, like even bring in a legitimate job team for them to beat to show people that these aren't just jobbers, because this is dangerously to a point where you've beaten these two small dudes so much that people aren't going to buy a win from them anyway because of how you've presented them to your fans, not because of anything about their size. Yes, it's already a disadvantage, but every time you now see these two small dudes, they lose. So it's tough, man. And I loved the Jurassic Express from day one, but it sucks that it's gonna feel like Luchasaurus is their Roman Reigns almost, where they can't win without him.
It totally is. Oh my God, I didn't even think about that. It's just Roman Reigns and his little buddies.
Yeah, so and Jungle Boy and Marco haven't really gotten a chance to shine like the other guys in the Shield did. So I don't know. It's a weird comparison to bring those two. But again, I feel like Luchasaurus has become that guy where they're like, oh, okay, we can make him like legit single star because of people getting behind him. But they could have done the same thing with Jungle Boy, and I think that they're missing the boat here. Mm-hmm. It just sucks. It sucks to see this match on the card and be like, yeah, I kind of got to relate it with the other two. They're all kind of like put over matches, make Proud and Powerful look good.
Like you said, this seems like a very filler episode too, which doesn't help anything.
Yeah, worth watching because all of the matches, like Kiss and Spears, could be fun, and I think that it's an opportunity for Kiss to sort of get on to showcase himself a little bit, and that's why I'll probably tune into that one. Cutler match, I'm really not totally into. They just haven't done a lot with Cutler since he's been off of being the Elite and stuff like that. They really haven't done a lot to make me believe he's going to win. His first match with MJF was abysmal. It was like it was the second match on Dynamite. Like, it left a bad taste in my mouth. He really hasn't got an opportunity to shine after that, because any chance he would have, he's just lost. So not the guy's fault, but hasn't really taken, like, there's just nothing to buy into it anymore. I feel him as like a very generic like babyface meant to put people over. Yeah. And again, Sonny Kiss, interested in that one just to see his continued development. Obviously going to watch Proud and Powerful versus Jurassic Express because this will be a fun match. It's just unfortunate that there's nothing in me to say that these two can win because they've never won. Yeah. And I don't think that Sonny Kiss might have one win. I know that Cutler doesn't have a win.
Cutler definitely doesn't. I don't think Sonny Kiss has a win, or if
maybe
he does,
that tag team match from Fight for the Fallen.
You might. Yep,
so
you might be right.
I think he has a victory there, but otherwise, I'm saying that it sucks that it's just a bunch of and whatever. Mm-hmm. So, but if you're gonna check out Dark tomorrow night, go ahead. If you're not, you can always check the Twitter. We'll probably have some GIFs up later on in the night. I'm working at night tomorrow, but once I get done, I'll check it out and throw some GIFs on there. But nonetheless, a decent week we have lined up for this week's AEW. While Dark isn't the best tomorrow, Dynamite is a stellar card, so worth checking that out. The one thing I will note, though, is it sucks that Dark wasn't as good as we were expecting, because that was, again, the Thanksgiving episode for Chicago. Yeah. And that Dynamite sort of felt like a letdown, so it's unfortunate for that city that they were sort of trying to prime as one of their hub cities didn't get necessarily a card that maybe they deserved.
Yeah, I mean, they had Evans and Omega, was that even
the week before?
Chicago? No, wait. Yep, that's the week before. I'm a fool. But you're right. Yeah, that's kind of a weak Dark for Chicago. But what are you gonna do?
The card itself for Dynamite was strong, but the show, it wasn't the best as we came out of feeling. Yeah. So it's just, I mean, again, not the worst card ever for a Chicago fan base. But I think that if it's a city that you want to be your hub city, you maybe could have put one or two matches well, maybe not even a big match, but a match that felt like 50-50 who could win.
Yeah.
Not literally every guy on that card is up against 0 and whatever guys, so maybe the fans at home didn't know that in attendance, but even still, I don't think that the fans in attendance are getting jazzed up over Havoc versus Cutler or Spears versus Kiss. So, yeah, but a fine week for AEW nonetheless. AJ, go ahead and plug your social media as we wrap things up.
Wait. Do you want to do something?
What do we want to do?
Do you want to guess if they won in the ratings?
Oh, the ratings didn't come out yet?
Yeah.
Oh, the ratings still aren't out yet? Let's go ahead and give our guess. Yes, I'm an AEW boy through and through. I don't really have a reason to think that... Well, it was the post-takeover episode of NXT. Thinking. Nope, still riding with AEW. I think that the Chicago card was really stacked, so... I think that but again, I could be wrong, but I don't feel like a takeover, because you get your post-show information on Raw and Survivor Series had already taken place, so you had 2 shows in between TakeOver and NXT, so I don't think it has that big of an impact. I know that they didn't reference it much but there was obviously NXT guys all over Survivor Series. So who knows? But I don't think it's as big of a deal.
I'm going to say NXT is going to do the same thing they did the week before, where they're going to edge them out just a little bit. Because here's the thing. Raw,
wasn't it 2 weeks ago they edged them out? Because didn't we get the AEW brought it back last week? But yeah.
But they Raw did not get a pay-per-view bump from Survivor Series. That's the thing to know. But I honestly think because they put over NXT so hard for Survivor Series, they put them over so hard throughout the whole entire week, they were having them invade, that I think they're going to edge them out just a little bit, because it's possible that during that Chicago show that there was a drop-off, because it really didn't deliver. Not entirely anyways. There was a lot of good, but there was a lot of bad. And so I'm thinking NXT is going to edge them out this week.
It is worth, there could have been enough things on that card to make people say, well, I'm not really enjoying this. Let me see what's happening on the other channel. So I don't know, man. It is worth noting, and like you said, Raw didn't get much of a bump from Survivor Series, so... I mean, and you saying that and them not really utilizing anyone on NXT on Raw, it would make sense that fans are sort of like, okay, well, we have to tune in tomorrow to see what's up with these NXT guys now. So I think they did themselves a favor and built up a little bit more of a fan base for NXT through the WWE roster. But I also think that AEW still is just going to hold strong. I mean, that might just be holding optimistic or whatever. But yeah, I think that there could be a chance that NXT comes out on top, but I'm not holding my breath on it. When do the ratings for that come out?
They're supposed to come out today, and for all I know, while we're recording this, but if not today, then definitely tomorrow.
It is worth noting we don't have ratings out yet if you are listening to this live, so it won't be out yet. But if you're listening to this in the next couple hours, it's going to be out, so you'll know for sure who was right and who was wrong. Again, I'm sticking with my boys in AEW, despite AJ's consistent pandering to the other side, brother. We're going to get heat for that one. You guys were talking about WWE for the whole podcast.
I'll take it.
Talked about Roman Reigns. You talked about Survivor Series. Thought this was.
The hell?
Why are you guys shooting on us at the end of the pod? No, but AJ, with the ratings discussion wrapped up, I'm glad you brought that up because it is something worth noting and not glossing over. But go ahead and plug your social media.
You can follow me on Twitter at BigMatchAJ, and you can follow me on Instagram at AJTheFitzy.
And you can always follow the podcast on Twitter at All Elite Podcast. You can check us out on Instagram at All Elite Everything. Check out the website, alleliteeverything.com. Facebook.com/All Elite Pod is where you can catch us on Facebook. And you can always find me on social media at All Elite Andy, at least on Twitter. I don't really know my Instagram off the top of my head or anything like that. Do want to shout out everyone for tuning in every week, giving us a listen, tweets, retweets, follows, all that type of stuff, subscribers on YouTube. If you're not subscribed on YouTube, make sure you smash that subscribe button, brother. But nonetheless, thanks everyone for tuning in week after week and continuing to support the podcast and what we've got going on here. Until next time, see ya.
Bye-bye.
And we are back, All Elite family, for a special update. We actually just finished up the podcast, and as we finished it up, I scrolled through Twitter, see Brian Alvarez has actually reported the official numbers for the NXT and AEW shows this week, and they were so shocking, I guess, that AJ and I definitely felt the need to discuss them. AEW being edged out by NXT pulling in 810,000 viewers, AEW down to 663,000. Alvarez says AEW barely won in all demographics except in 50 plus. Otherwise, they were neck and neck. Shit, man, that is still not a good look, despite winning in every demographic. That is, except for the 50 plus. But
I understand it's the Thanksgiving show. I get it, but wow, I didn't expect it to be that low. I was expecting both shows to be relatively low. Like if NXT was around like 700,000, I would be going, okay, whatever, it's Thanksgiving. But the fact that they have like a 200,000 jump on them is, whoa, that's pretty significant. I didn't expect it. I know I just got off of me saying that I thought NXT would win because they put them over so hard. I didn't expect them to win. I was expecting like a 10,000 win, not a 200,000.
Yeah, I was right there with you and sort of expecting it to be AEW might edge them out, might fall right under. I've literally come off of saying I thought we were going to win to seeing a tweet very much saying that things were not as we had hoped. And, that's not the worst thing in the world. We have not necessarily come out on top in previous weeks and been able to fix things, but this is going to be something they talked about not being reactionary. This is going to be a hard one to not react to. The card, once again, going into Chicago, we were talking about that card being a very wild card, pretty interesting card, worth tuning into. Our boy Joseph once again commented on it being like a pretty stacked card. So with that, that being
Joseph
said,
is gonna be so annoying.
He is. He's already being annoying. Shout out to our boy Joseph, the big NXT boy. But hey, it happens. And again, this is why in week 1 I was saying like I don't care about the ratings, and I'm saying the same thing now. I'm glad that there is 1.4 million fans tuned in to professional wrestling on Wednesdays. It will be worth noting if this is a continued trend, though. Maybe not even so much of like the loss, but if NXT drops down to 500 and AEW's at 6, that's still not at all what we need.
It's gotta be because of Thanksgiving, right? The holiday weekend, people just aren't watching as much wrestling.
They're traveling and stuff.
Yeah, if it stays this low, then I'll be very concerned. Yeah, but I don't expect it to at all, and I would hope that at least it's going to be back up into the 800s on Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, that is the biggest thing and one of the key points to me. I mean, shoot, I want to say 2 weeks ago we were looking at maybe being back into that million number, where it was like almost 900,000. Now we're down to 660,000. That is not a positive number.
Not at all.
There's no way to spin it, man. It's just not a good number in comparison to NXT. Hopefully they can bounce back. Again, this is a good card, and I would, if you're not going to do Pac and Omega before, maybe now you definitely are going to do Pac and Omega on this card. Again, they don't want to be reactionary.
Whatever.
But now is a good time. I mean, it just shows, man. And you were right. WWE, you were 100% right that the Survivor Series and TakeOver,
they put a lot of work in,
made people who were interested in both companies say, all right, this week I'm not going to tune into what AEW has. And that, like, the positive for AEW 2 weeks ago was they were coming off a pay-per-view. They had that number. The negative was the next week NXT had that ability with that number.
Yep.
So now NXT has the momentum, and you don't really have a pay-per-view or anything lined up for the near future to swing the momentum back in your favor. So
I think the quote from Brian Alvarez last week was, NXT won because Vince McMahon doesn't like to lose. And I think that's very true. In Survivor Series, I mean. Mm-hmm. That is the reason NXT went over at Survivor Series, because for 7 weeks they got their ass kicked, and they're really starting to pay attention.
Yeah, so just definitely something we felt like we had to hop on and quickly note, because we're probably going to be talking about it for the rest of the day anyway, just because it's a shocking number. It's unfortunate to see Like AJ said, Thanksgiving, the holiday, everything. NXT was still able to maintain their number or grow it a little bit. So you can't spin it too many different ways. Like there might have been some sporting events on, but again, 2 weeks ago there was a Democratic debate on. So there have been plenty of things to compete with them on Wednesdays. This just wasn't their Wednesday. So again, AEW has made a big point to not want to be reactionary. I could see a lot of tweets come out from the AEW talent today or the next couple of days that are just maybe not reactionary, but responding to what's going on, and that's something you don't see from on the other side. So I would hope that it's just quiet. And the best thing they have for them is that they're fortunate this was a Thanksgiving week. The news drops on Monday. They have a show on Wednesday. They can bounce back by Thursday.
Yep, that's absolutely true. And hopefully they do bounce back, and I'm going to be rooting for them.
And it does take away the ability for them to be reactionary per se, because they might have had the numbers before everyone else, but if they didn't and they're just sort of getting the numbers this morning as everyone else did, there's not a lot they can do before Wednesday anyway. They can announce Pac and Omega as an official match, but otherwise, they can't do much.
No.
So, yeah, we just wanted to tack that on to the end of the podcast. If you're listening to this afterwards, you will have heard us debate if it was going to happen, and then immediately after, react to the fact that I was wrong and AJ was a little wrong too. So, but that really wraps everything up for us this week once again. Glad to have a ratings discussion, among other things. Until next time, thank you everyone for tuning into the All Elite Podcast. See ya.
Bye.